When I now ask that the live stream is started.
Mr. Chairman, I confirm the live stream has now been started.
Thank you. So welcome to this meeting of the Cabinet. In addition to the Cabinet members and other councillors present in the room and officers, we have some councillors joining our meeting remotely. I'll now check that they can hear us and we them. We have Councillor Crockett. No, I don't think so. Councillor Harrington.
Yes, Chairman, I can hear it and see you. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Harvey.
Yes, Leader, I can hear and see you.
Thank you. I'm just going back to Councillor Crockett. Are you there, Councillor Crockett? No, that's fine. Thank you. Councillor Cabinet support members remotely. I think I see Councillor Tyler is also present. Councillor Tyler.
Yes, Councillor. Yes, Leader, I can hear and see you. Thank you.
As Cabinet support members, let me see Councillor Hardwick.
Good afternoon, Leader. Yes, I can see and hear you clearly.
Councillor Ginman.
Good afternoon, Leader. I can see and hear you.
Any other support Cabinet members present? I don't think so, just those two, thank you. So group leaders and their representatives, first of all, Councillor James.
Send apologies, Leader.
Thank you. Councillor Lester.
Yes, just joined you. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bob Matthews is present in the room. Councillor Tony Fagan.
Yes, Leader, I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Ginman that mentioned you already. Councillor Philip Howes is on his way, I'm told. Councillor Alyssa Swinglehurst.
Good afternoon, Leader. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Louis Stark sends his apologies. And Councillor Christy Balderson. We don't know whether she's attending or not. Thank you. Thank you. I'll now formally open the meeting. The agenda papers and other relevant information for this meeting are available for public viewing on the Herefordshire Council website. The Council is streaming this meeting live on the Herefordshire Council YouTube channel and making a recording. To ensure the recording quality is maintained, please speak as clearly as possible and keep background noise to a minimum. Microphones should be muted when you're not speaking. Please ensure that mobile phones and other devices are turned to silent. Others are permitted to film, photograph and record our public meetings, provided that it does not disrupt the business of the meeting. As we move through the agenda, in addition to discussion by Cabinet members, I will invite group leaders or their representatives, where appropriate, to provide views and questions from their group on each item. Where appropriate, I will also call on scrutiny chairpersons to comment on behalf of their committee. Voting will be undertaken by a show of hands in the room. Only Cabinet members physically present in the room may vote. So first item is apologies for absence. We have had apologies from Councillor Stark and Councillor James. Any other apologies?
Councillor Hay has also sent apologies.
Thank you. Declarations of interest. Are there any Schedule 1, Schedule 2 or other interest items on the agenda today? I see none, thank you. Third item is to approve and sign the minutes of the meeting held on 24th of November. Cabinet members, are you content that the minutes are an accurate record? Will you all show? Thank you very much. Item 4, to receive questions from members of the public. We have 6 questions from members of the public for this meeting, and the response to each has been published as a supplement to the agenda papers. Those members of the public who have submitted questions have the opportunity to submit a written supplementary or to join the meeting to ask their question live. The rules which apply to those who are asking supplemental questions have been explained to those who are attending, and perhaps they could just indicate that they are aware of those rules. I think so. Ms. Reid, are you aware of the rules? Well, I'll go on because I explained a little of the rules now. These include rules that state that supplemental questions are to be no more than 1 minute in length and to include a question. These rules have been agreed by all councillors and are in place to ensure that the questioners are treated equally and to ensure that meetings are conducted in a manner appropriate to a public meeting with due respect being paid to all involved. As set out in the Constitution, a healthy democracy depends on active citizenship, which includes attending meetings such as these and the right to ask questions. Those asking questions today have asked questions at previous meetings and I believe are aware of the rules. Having asked for confirmation that you are aware, I will exercise some leniency, but would ask that speakers accept that I, as chair, will be running this meeting. And if I ask a questioner to stop speaking, they must please comply with that request. I will now ask the clerk to confirm. That all sounds terribly formal, I'm afraid. It's not intended to be, but we do have to keep these meetings regular. I will now ask the clerk to confirm if a supplemental question is to be asked for each of the questions. The first questioner is Mr. P. McKay.
There's no supplementary from Mr. Mackay.
Thank you very much. Ms. D. Conway.
Yes, there is a supplementary question later.
Thank you, Sarah. I think you'll have to read that out for us, Sarah.
Yes. The supplementary question reads, it is important that everyone remembers that the public did not request an audit. They asked to see the data in full council that the rates of fabricated and induced illness in Herefordshire are not above the national average. It is hugely disappointing that you are now saying that the audit will not be complete until mid-January, which is 6 months from when the allegations were made. This is hardly the LA acting at pace, but confirms that the LA are consistent in moving timelines and targets, which is not in the public's best interests. The council have claimed publicly that they have a lower than average FII number, yet they are still not able to provide data. It is a concern that this delay in providing this information is a deliberate act, so it cannot be incorporated into Mrs. Brazil's forthcoming report. Understandably, the public have a right to seek transparency on delayed timelines, briefing and full reasons for the delay in providing factual information. If there are even 6 cases of FII locally, that would represent 10 times national average. I haven't done an audit, but I personally know of 5 mothers locally who have been accused, and in all 5 cases, the accusation of FII was wrong. There is already enough data to know that FII has been overused in this county and used as a tool for threatening parents who are asking for help from social services. In all 5 cases, the child has had a medical condition which has not yet been diagnosed, or neurodiversity or both. So with at least 5 false accusations locally, it is extraordinary to hear that the rate of cases is not above the national average. We can only hope that the investigating officer who is gathering the FII fact-based data is independent from the LA to avoid a conflict of interest, rather than spending a huge amount of funds on an officer and copious amounts of time trawling through the department's records, which have in any case been criticised in multiple inspections and court judgments. Would it not have been better to ask all families who have been accused of FII to step forward into a safe space, perhaps by making direct contact with the external independent reviewer?
Councillor Toynbee, there's a sort of question there. There's an area of public concern, isn't it, about this? So I'll leave you to comment, if I may.
Yes, exactly. I recognise that it is an area of concern. So there are sort of 2 things in that. As far as the data is concerned, you know, when there's a claim that it's 100 times the national average, we have to get it right. We have to go thoroughly into the data so that we can give an accurate response. So I make no apologies for that, and I'm sorry it's taking longer than it could. As far as personal experiences are concerned, people are very welcome to contact me or our Director of Children's Services to tell us about their experience. Thank you.
I think if I can make an observation as well, I think that there's a distinction between cases of FII which are kind of have gone all the way and allegations. And I think we're talking about, a lot of these cases we're talking about allegations, and I think it's quite hard to provide the data in respect of allegations. I think if the course has run its way fully to have certain, you can have a certain number which are clearly identified as that's what's being put through, and of course we all know that depends upon, it's a doctor's opinion, it's not the council that makes a view on that. So I think when we're trying to look at how many allegations that there are, I think it takes a lot more work to go through all the data. Question 3, Mrs. Curry, I think you have a supplemental, and you don't have to rush your question. So you know, we're not rigid about the minute.
Thank you. Is that working okay for everybody? Well, thank you.
Perhaps you can speak a little bit closer to the microphone.
I have edited my question considerably from what I actually wanted to write, because I was very mindful of the fact that you do request that they are within 1 minute. I would like to observe that if I had submitted a written question in its original form and asked the clerk to read it out, it may have in fact been longer than 1 minute. And I am doing my best to oblige with what you've asked, but I would also ask and request that I send my question in its original form to John after the meeting, without it having been trimmed down and having timed it to be 1 minute, because I respect the fact that I don't want to be criticised. I'm here to try and work as a member of the public in raising concerns that we have in a constructive manner, and I will do that as best I can within the Constitution.
Thank you very much.
Okay. It is hardly surprising to the families affected that there is again more denial regarding allegations of a former employee. As there was no exit interview for this employee by the council, you cannot claim this matter wouldn't have been raised if given a safe space. Ofsted and past press releases confirm the council had overly optimistic views regarding the department, and I would assert the official response in my question is again overly optimistic. The significantly higher numbers of children in care and adopted when compared nationally has to stem from an attitude somewhere. The lies and inaccurate information given to courts by the Children's Directorate has to stem from somewhere. When you work from the assumption that this phrase was in use with a culture of being heavy-handed in the removal of children, these numbers make sense. Remember the commitment to leave no stone unturned? I would suggest the time has come to start working from this hypothesis. In my experience, few of the Cabinet do understand how a Herefordshire Council are unintentionally discriminatory or intimidating. Being the only person last Friday to be interrupted repeatedly during reading a supplementary question, when the chair later took circa 2 minutes 20 seconds to read another question, was unreasonable. If you can publicly behave in this manner as a chairman, who later was recorded as saying, "Shut her up, will you?" towards a traumatised female in public, then what happens behind closed doors is clearly questionable. Please can the Cabinet member answer when will the Children's Directorate, council members, along with the managers for all local authority staff, receive additional training for dealing with traumatised parents, disability, equality, human rights, and the training needs to be specific. Trauma behaviour, both paediatric and adults, which is separate training. Thank you.
Councillor Toynbee.
Yes, thank you very much, and thank you for your introductory comments as well before your question, which we will take into account, I can assure you. Thank you. As far as the disrespectful language you referred to is concerned, I have absolutely zero tolerance for anything like that, and I know that the leaders we now have in place do as well. So we would come down really hard on any disrespectful language. I completely agree on the importance of attitudes and assumptions. As far as stones being turned, I have seen a lot of that going on, and it is still going on. So that work is being done and has been done. And I completely agree about training, and we're adding training to the plan, and I'm always keen to hear specific suggestions about what training we need to put in place. And I think actually there is quite a lot of training out there that not everybody is aware of, so part of it is making people aware of the training that is out there, but I completely agree, it's very important. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question is from Ms. Rachel Gallagher. Has Ms. Gallagher been able to? Very good, thank you.
Is it working?
Yeah, we can hear you fine, thank you.
Okay. Well, in response to my question, it would be, you do not try to keep siblings together. You do not even allow them to form a bond. How can a court consider the relationship between siblings when you deny them one? As for support, where is it? Again, 3 children that have had no support and were made to believe that they would be seeing their sibling every 6 weeks. It's been 6 months. How is this acceptable? It took you 4 months to arrange for my kids to meet because their kinship/foster carer refused to travel and blamed one of the children. If I had done that, it would be emotional harm and neglect. Yet someone you've passed off does it and you support it. How is that fair and in the best interest of the children? As for the adoption rates, can you provide statistics to back up your claim of not being higher than the national average?
Councillor Toynbee.
Yes, thank you very much. I completely understand the issues that you're referring to and how difficult and emotional it is. As far as the data is concerned, I think we can provide that information. I can't do it off the top of my head now. I can't talk about particular cases now either, but I'd be very happy if you can meet up with me and the Director of Children's Services to talk about this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jo. So the 5th question from Hi Sheriff. Is there any supplemental questions?
No, I've not received anything, Leader.
And then final question 6 from Ms. Reid, who is present. I don't know whether you have a supplemental question.
Yes, I have.
Written out,
I have
read out.
absolutely. The supplementary question reads, many public questions have not been fully answered. This PQ was not answered at all. Please fully answer it. Number 3 of the Ofsted areas for improvement includes response to pre-birth children and babies, which effectively is support for pregnant women and mothers of babies. Would the Cabinet recommend that the draft Herefordshire Children's Services Improvement Plan is amended to include implementation by the 31st of March 2023 of the Ofsted recommended support for the mothers of babies? This should also reduce the increasing number of babies going into care and suggest some reunification would be possible. Also, the high rate and cost of children in care in Herefordshire suggests increased reunification. However, the plan at 6.5 states scoping of reunification framework underway with draft due February 2023. I suggest that Cabinet considers recommending that the plan is amended so that implementation is expedited.
Councillor Toynbee.
Yes, thank you very much. I completely agree about the importance of reunification, and that is in the plan. As far as the support for mothers of babies is concerned, you know, there are delivery plans, there are all sorts of different levels of plans, so not everything is seen in the level of the plan that we're looking at today. But I think it might be useful if the questioner had a meeting with the Service Director for improvement if there are detailed matters around that she'd like to discuss. Thank you.
Excuse me, I didn't actually, could you repeat that last sentence, please, because I didn't actually hear it.
It was an invitation for you to meet with the Service Director for improvement to discuss including this in our plan.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, thank you. So that's the questions. Ms. Coe, to your point about written questions perhaps being longer, I must confess that was going through my mind as that the first question we had. The council rules seem to say that written questions should be less than 140 words.
That's the first question, sorry to shout.
Yeah.
It's only the first question. The second question is a supplementary question. It has no word in it. Your only request is that it is read within 1 minute. I could read it within 1 minute at my computer. You wouldn't understand the word. It would be at such pace, you would take it in.
If the constitution isn't clear, then that's something which we need to look at as a council, because it does seem unfair that someone can submit a long written question, whereas personally turns up as to what. So I'm not going to enter a debate with you at this stage. But all I'm doing
consider that we get given the same 3 minutes as councillors do, and to give us an opportunity to actually make a point, because there's very little you can say in 1 minute. You know,
I think, Ms. Curry, we must put this out to discussion by the relevant committee within the council. And so I see Councillor Howells is nodding in agreement as chair of the scrutiny committee. We perhaps need some clearer guidance on these things. And what is good is that we have participation from members of the public. They are coming in and talking. It's much better to have them not have anybody. So I'll now move on to questions from councillors, and we have a question from Councillor Nigel Shaw. Has Councillor Shaw a supplemental question?
He does, Leader. The text of it. Councillor Shaw thanks Cabinet Member for the reply, and says it does prompt me to ask, what is the current total complement of roles for the council and for Hoople, and how many vacancies are currently open for each? In other words, the number of FTE roles currently in the council and Hoople, and how many vacancies in each organisation. Is the mean level of absent roles reflected in a budget reduction, i.e. SWAP, South West Audit Partnership, make a provision of 3.5% of payroll cost saving vacancies, maternity leave and sickness. Does the council reflect this kind of saving in its budget?
Councillor Harvey, you're remote. I suspect you will want to provide a written answer to that.
Yes, I think I do. As usual, Councillor Shaw is made of questions. I think he's managed to slip several in there instead of just the one. And I'd also like to clarify, his question was specifically about IT, but it seems to have broadened out into other areas. And I'd just like to get some clarification from him of the scope of the question that he's asking in his supplementary, so that I can give him a proper answer.
Thank you. So moving on now to item 6, reports from scrutiny committees. The recommendations from the Children and Young People Scrutiny Committee in relation to the Children's Improvement Action Plan will be dealt with as part of the next item on the agenda. There are no other scrutiny reports to be considered today. Item 7, Children's Improvement Action Plan. This is a significant item. The purpose of this report is to present Cabinet with the Children's Services Improvement Plan for authorisation to submit the plan to Ofsted following the inspection in July 2022. The item starts on page 11 of the agenda pack. Councillor Toynbee, would you please introduce this item?
Yes, thank you. I'm very pleased to be presenting the improvement plan, which you can find in Appendix A, and which colleagues you have read and which we've had many discussions about. So we're here today as a Cabinet to endorse this plan and to authorise the Corporate Director for Children and Young People, in consultation with the Council's corporate leadership team, to submit the action plan to Ofsted no later than the 20th of December 2022, i.e. 5 days from today. I'm very pleased that a lot of conversations and engagement went on with many of the people and groups we work with to put together this plan. This process has been as important as the product, as it's crucial that we learn about our services from the perspective of the people we work with. The plan is now ready for submission, but we will naturally keep on building these relationships and having the conversations, even if they're difficult. And I know we all value hearing from families, carers, partners, and staff members. Putting this plan together has been a huge job, and I'm extremely grateful to the many people who've been part of the work. It provides us with the clarity and the focus that we need. As we know, colleagues, some of the structures and foundations that our services need have not been in place for many years. So it's very good that we finally have clearer systems, clearer performance management, quality assurance, and clearer lines of accountability. An important part of this accountability is Herefordshire's Improvement Board, which, as you know, is independently chaired by our DFE Improvement Advisor, and you can see that government diagram in your papers. The Improvement Board met on December the 1st to review and sign off this plan, which was an important vote of confidence in us. And I'm very pleased that at that meeting, our Children's Commissioner commented that the plan is well drafted and comprehensive. I know you've all greatly valued the support and challenge we've received from our DFE Commissioner and other colleagues in the DFE in Ofsted. Whatever the new year brings, we will continue to make the best of all support available to be the best we can be. This plan also went to Children's Scrutiny Committee on Tuesday, and the committee made 3 recommendations for us to consider today, and you can find them in your amended cover sheet for this agenda item. So I'd like to move that we accept scrutiny's recommendations. Do you want, Chair, do you want me to read them out? Do you want them seconded now? Do you want to do it at the end of this item?
I think we'll probably do it at the end, and maybe Councillor Howes might like to comment on that at that time.
Okay, so we'll come to that at the end of the item. So for now, I'll just say that as we all know, the plan is a plan and the work is the work. The plan is not the work. But this is really, really important. It's an invaluable framework that's going to enable us to make progress, to track progress, to build in feedback from everybody we work with, and to keep moving forwards, and to get our services where they need to be for children and families. And this plan is for them. And Darren is with us if you have any questions for clarification. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So any comments from Cabinet members? Councillor Davis.
Hi Darrell, and sorry, Councillor Toynbee as well, regarding the improvement plan, and you can probably hear people saying, well, we've heard this all before, and nothing's changed. And what I have seen within it is that there are, it's like I said, the improvement plan itself will come after, but for me, it is that real acceptance that we should know within a really short amount of time if there's those moves towards improvement. But it will get my support. It's going through. What I really want to understand is that I found this quite complex to read, and at its heart of whatever we're talking about here, we're talking about young people, children, and it's my bugbear. Say it in every meeting, that things that we write are not easily read by younger people, and how we engage with those younger people, etc. I'm very passionate about us using art as a form to help people to explain our policies and things such as that. And I just wondered the messaging, how we get this out to young people in a way that they can understand, because the level of the reports are so high, they're at postgraduate levels. So I just wondered what our plans were in order to really paint that story for young people, so that when they look at it, they go, right, that's where I am in that part of this diagram. And they can look at it and say, okay, so how will I know at this certain point? Because at the moment, I think that piece of work's missing.
I'm just chipping in first. Yeah, I completely agree, and I think that's sort of the next step in a way once we've endorsed this, and part of the plan and part of something, as you know, that I'm always pushing for is to make our systems much clearer, and not just to children but to adults as well. So not just to have a nice clear version of where we're going and what our plans are, but of all our systems in general, and we've still got some work to do on that on our website and stuff. So thanks for banging on about it.
Thank you for the question, and Also on the meeting today virtually is Gail Hancock, my Service Director for Improvement, and I may refer some of the questions to her during this process, but I mention her now because she's leading a piece of work once this plan is submitted to Ofsted to work with young people to develop a version that's more appropriate for children and young people, including children and young people with special educational needs and disability. Certainly with Councillor Toynbee, we're looking at how do we produce a variation of the report that is more accessible to members of the public through our website, but also how we just communicate progress so that it's not just tables and data and the like and stuff that officers and councillors are perhaps more used to receiving. So I think it's a very valid point and something we're very conscious of. And Gail's leading a piece of work to make sure that we produce a more accessible version in the new year.
And yeah, I suppose it's just to highlight, and I didn't realise Gail's on there, so hello Gail. And I think one of the points, and one of the members of the public's question, their secondary question was talking about neurodiversion and how, we're learning more around neurodiversity every single day, but how there is a theme at the moment when we're talking about certain cases where perhaps the children or the parents are neurodiverse, etc. And I would absolutely love us to really target that because it's been highlighted on a number of different areas. I think for us to see that piece of work, I'd love to be a part of it if we're moving forward.
Thank you.
Other comments? Councillor Chowns?
Thanks. Really take your points, Gemma, about accessibility in terms of the kind of, the RAG rating and the kind of reporting back on how we're doing on things. Progress in a lot of areas. The area of staff sufficiency is just so crucial to, a permanent solution to the challenges faced in children's services, and that is the area where there is the greatest difficulty. Actually, it's the fostering service that is, I think, the one and only red rated area in this. I mean, Darryl, can you just kind of give us any more assurance about progress being made in that area and immediately planned activities so that we can make sure that we continue the drive and focus in that area?
Yes, I can. Thank you. So again, we'll get mixed comments, I think, about the format of the plan. It's designed for a particular audience, obviously, but we need to make it accessible to all, and I think that's the point that we'll take from each of the questions here. In terms of so we have, under my leadership certainly, and Diana's leadership, we are aiming for an open and transparent dialogue on everything that we do, and that's why we've applied what we believe to be an honest RAG rating, so progress rating against the activities at this particular point in time as we submit it to Ofsted. So our foster carers do an amazing job, without whom many young people wouldn't have a family home for those children that should be in our care. And we don't have enough foster carers. And we would encourage anybody that's thinking about fostering to get in touch with us. The service, under the head of service, certainly is engaged with foster carers at the moment to make sure that we bring their support, their training, their fees and allowances up to a standard that they expect and we expect. I think it's a service that was neglected during COVID because obviously foster carers were largely working and operating remotely. So we're working hard with them at the minute to listen to them, engage with them and develop our learning development software for them in the year ahead. That activity is ongoing at the moment, and I'm very happy to come back at a later point and update on the progress there.
Yeah, thank you, Darryl. It's a very key area for us. Councillor Harrington.
Thank you, Chairman. It's a bit more of a sort of simplistic question in a way for Darryl and possibly for Councillor Toynbee, is that we've talked in the past about extra corporate support so that phones were picked up, emails were responded to. I'm not quite sure where that's sitting in the report. I may well have missed it, knowing me, but can I just have some assurance that we have given thought to that and we've given some resource to that? Because people will, well, it's difficult to accept that things are stretched and we don't always have the resource we want. but at the very least, we should be able to give people quick responses to emails, to phone calls, to requests for information for whatever quarters those are coming from. And we talked around that, and I just want to make sure that's been captured and that resource is there.
So thank you for your question. So that's one of the areas where we've recruited 15 extra admin support colleagues to our corporate support service, and we're currently realigning our admin support teams so that they're aligned to individual social work teams and the like. That will mean that we're in a much better position. One of the common complaints from families is that, and some professionals, is that when they contact us, there's a delay in responding, and that's something we're acutely aware of. That's the reason why we put that additional resource in place and are aligning those services, and we'll be monitoring that response as we go forward in the new year, and we have plans to provide additional support to teams early in the new year and throughout the year. Linked to corporate support, we have additional HR support, finance support, project management support. So corporately, there's a great deal of council support being put into children's services to make sure that we can deliver this plan. But specific to the point about answering emails and answering telephones, we're not yet where I want us to be, but we're making progress, and we've certainly added those 15 extra posts.
Thank you. Councillor Davis.
Yeah, sorry, I just remembered something I wanted to raise. And it came from Mrs. Reid with her question, and there was a slight differentiation in what we were saying in the wording, which was around parents of babies. And is there some work undergoing at the moment, Darryl, regarding specifically work under that particular area?
Yes, there is. So we're currently working with midwifery services and health visit services to develop and enhance existing pathways for early referral and early support. And we're working with early help services as well to make sure that we have an extended range of family support options for expectant mothers and parents and families of newborn babies. So it's a work in progress. I'm pleased that we've made some progress certainly since July. Those new pathways and that pre-birth panel are in place. We're getting good feedback from families and from health services about the way that's operating. We need to monitor that over time, and again, we need to listen to families to make sure that we're delivering the support that they're asking for, and obviously the children and people are safe in that process.
Thank you.
With no more questions from Cabinet, so I think what I'll do is I'll ask Councillor Howells to comment from his position as Scrutiny Chair, and then he can mention the suggested recommendations, and then that'll give an opportunity for all the group leaders to comment on those recommendations as well before I put them to the Cabinet.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, despite the world trying to thwart my attempts to get in person to Cabinet twice, can't believe it, I'm here, and thank you for the opportunity. I thought it was important to be here in person. Obviously we had scrutiny on Tuesday, so there hasn't been much time between end of Tuesday evening and today to take actions on it, but I think those who were present would agree that we had a very constructive exchange between officers, and you've seen the key questions that we asked by area, which I thought were useful to add to the report. And we've picked out 3 key recommendations, which again, only this morning you had, so it's reassuring to see that, and more important, the public are reassured to see that you responded very rapidly to adding our 3 recommendations, all of which are equally important, and with a timeline to them to do them. I think we could all say is at pace, so reassured and pleased to see that we take some quick action in accepting the recommendations. Thank you. And we also submitted a document from a primary head teacher who saw it, which I know is again part of the information that you've got, which was submitted by a co-optee who actually asked for a teacher's comment, and I think you'll see that that very much supports the recommendation and the outcome of the meeting, so thank you for including that. And obviously we did also say that we do recommend a Human Rights Act and Employment and Equality Act training is also given. I'm sure that's being considered too. But overall, I'm just really pleased to see that it's recommended already with the executive that you accept and amend the improvement plan in 24 hours. That's a pretty speedy response. And if we deliver what we say equally speedily, then we've been doing some really good work to satisfy the public that we are actually listening, because I think that came across on Tuesday, that we were really listening and we made some changes really quickly. So that's a really, really good sign, and thank you very much for that. Don't think I need to add any more.
Great, thank you, Councillor Howes. Go on then to Councillor Lester, if I may.
Yes, thank you very much. Sorry, I was just looking for another page. I've lost my the page that I wanted to draw everyone's attention to, which is the priorities on the plan. I think it's page 27. Sorry, 25. So to start with, the practice priorities that the hexagons, is it? So it starts off with if you look at the centre, it says all children and young people in Herefordshire feel safe, loved and valued and grow up. Surely that's an aspiration, isn't it, rather than a statement of fact? So would it not be better if the statement or the strapline would say, we want all children to feel safe and whatnot, rather than it put it there as it makes it sound like that's a fact. And if this is an aspiration to try and improve things, then perhaps it should say that as an aspiration, that we want that to be the case. Under the leadership heading, I think I understand what it means, but I just think it's probably not so crystal clear as perhaps, Councillor Davis was alluding to. It's got the phrase "with, not to," so promotes and leadership that promotes and models restorative practice with, not to. I think it means we'll work with you, not throw things at you type thing. But I think that could benefit from some rewording. And I was wondering as well, because we've been talking about reunification, and this reunification is an issue that we've raised in the past and the importance of that. And we had a member of the public question it as well this afternoon, talking about reunification, wondering if in the priorities the need for reunification shouldn't be a higher priority where it's possible. It's always got to be caveated with where it's possible, but it is in the report there, but and it's mentioned, but I just think in terms of practice priorities, shouldn't that be an overall aspiration from the outset about reunification, and then set that right up at the top, because that's what a lot of families could really benefit from and really want to see happen. So there's a question there: should reunification be in that priorities as a higher priority, fleshed out? And then really we note that there's the RAG rating, and it's a very useful way of seeing where the priorities where the progress is being made. We note the challenges that are there and exist, but a question I have for Councillor Toynbee is there's a lot of yellow there and some red. Obviously that's a concern. It seems like there's some immediacy in addressing that because there are delays and risks. So what's the plan to try and address those red and yellow aspects to it? And then one final point, and I think the priorities sum up how things are going to move forward, which I think is vital and crucial because of the past failings. But one of the things that we think that is really fundamental to this whole process is building that trust with those families that the council's been engaged with. And so would it not be better to have something in the plan that said, well, one of the key priorities is to re-establish and build on that trust, because we've had members of the public come to the council and really articulate the fact that they don't feel that there's trust, and you know, is that something that should be more explicit in the plan? Thank you.
Right, well, lots of questions there.
So if I start perhaps, so thank you for your questions, Councillor Lester. I think, yes, you're absolutely right. The in terms of the practice priorities page, that central cell there is the published Children's Services and Partnership vision, and happy to make it more explicit that it's a vision and aspiration, as you quite rightly point out there. You're quite right. So I'm certainly leading a drive that we behave differently as a service and that we practice differently. That's supported by the Cabinet and our Cabinet member, that we are a more restorative practitioner and service going forward. And yes, that means working with and not to, which has been absolutely feedback from families that we've been hearing loud and clear in recent weeks and months. And again, a small change to the wording of that will make that more clear in terms of the structure of that sentence. Happy to do that. The page that you're referring to is a set of practice priorities rather than an overall set of service priorities. So I'm not sure how I'd necessarily integrate reunification on that screen, although it's referred to indirectly into the plans and planning cell. We're making that priority about ensuring that we get planning for permanency right. So the permanence plan for some children and young people in our care is that with the right support, they are returned home. And we certainly identified a number of children and young people for whom that is the appropriate permanence plan, and we're progressing those. So I want to reassure you that that is a priority for me and my service going forward. And then I know you've asked the question direct to Councillor Toynbee in terms of how we progress to the reds and the yellows, but I'll start that, and I'm sure Councillor Toynbee will chip in. There is an incredibly robust project management approach applied to each of the 7 work streams for this rather ambitious improvement plan. It's scrutinised by the Improvement Board, by yourselves as group leaders, by Cabinet, by scrutiny and others. So it will be one of the most watched plans in terms of progress and impact over the coming months and years, and quite rightly so. There is some of the activity that's in the plan has to be sequenced. So in order to kind of get to green or make the right progress on some elements, we've got to get something else sorted first. So some of it's pending or waiting on other elements of the plan to come together. But what we intend to do is each month is update the document so that reg rating is accurate, reflects progress at the time, reflects the activity that's been undertaken. We're also mindful of developing some means of demonstrating impact, because the RAG rating, of course, is about progress of activity by and large, rather than the difference that it's making. So we're trying to work with colleagues to make sure that we can also articulate to you, to Scrutiny Committee, and to the families that are interested and are part of this process, what difference we're making. And if I may, I'll hand over to Councillor Toynbee.
Yes, thank you. Very useful and helpful comments. As far as the RAG rating is concerned, yes, Darryl explained that well. I think there may be some that can already be moved actually from yellow to green, and obviously that's what this plan is for. It's for, you know, making progress on all these issues, and I hope that its clarity will be really helpful to you and all of us, all colleagues, all fellow councillors, to keep track of things. So I'm really hopeful that that'll be helpful to you, and I completely agree about the importance of relationships and reunification, and I do know that is now a priority, and I'll make sure that it's reflected in all the papers that come to us. Thank you.
I'll move on now to Councillor Matthews, who is in the room with us. Councillor Matthews.
Thank you, Chairman. First of all, I'd like to thank Councillor Howells and his group for bringing out some very sound recommendations. The one that caught my eye was recommendation 1, trauma awareness training for officers, etc., etc. What perturbs me, Director, is when I hear members of the public writing and coming here and repeatedly saying, it gives me the impression that the initial approach is so vital that if you upset and aggravate the situation, it takes a lot of smoothing off to get the children settled and get the parents understanding. That initial move is very, very important. And that, therefore, the trauma awareness training, etc. And I think that, in my opinion, from what I've heard and seen over recent years, needs a lot of improvement and urgent improvement, because constantly people are coming here and saying, I hate to use this word, things are a little bit too aggressive on occasions, and a little bit more understanding and care to say, look, hang on, there by the grace of God we could find ourselves in that place, and let's be a little bit more understanding and caring at that early stages. So as I say, it's been raised by the scrutiny committee, and I thank them for their hard work. The impression also I get, and I asked the leader at full council, supervision seemed to improve because the cabinet improved the supervision, now more regular. I warmly welcome that. Do you feel, Darrell, that there's still room for improvement there, and are you making sure that the right supervision is taking place as a result of you know, doing whatever action you can? Because I think that unless somebody is really on top of things and making sure things are improving, because it's no good bringing these improvements reports. We've had them before. We read them and we say, oh, we're going to do this and that. 4 years later, we're back dealing with the same things. So we've got to make sure that we get right to the root of things, give the public and the parents involved all the care and consideration at those initial stages. And if you could just tell me what is the most urgent thing, in your humble opinion, on those recommendations that need attention. I know they're all important, but which two would you highlight as being the most pressing at the moment?
Just two. Thank you for the question. So I absolutely agree with you, and it kind of links to Councillor Lester's question and my response in terms of we need to listen more to families. We need to work in that restorative way, and where we get it wrong, to apologise and do our best to put things right. It takes time to build trust and to improve the service from a low base. I want to reassure you and families in the room that we are working hard to try to do that. In terms of supervision, of course, there's more to do. There's more to do on almost every element of our performance and our practice at the moment. With the supervision is happening much more frequently at an acceptable level in terms of frequency. There is more to do around the quality of supervision so that it's reflective and keeps the child absolutely the focus of what we do and thinking about the outcomes for the child and the child's lived experience. So yes, of course, I can't imagine a position in the near future where everybody's saying, no, I think we've done everything we need to do on that one. We've got a long way to go, and we're very focused on what we need to do. The two things that I think are most urgent, I think probably the most pressing for us is recruitment and retention. So we've got a very committed and dedicated permanent workforce. And we've also got a significant number of locums. We've got some very good locums, but of course, the proportion of our workforce that is locum means that, there's a potential limiting factor on our pace of improvement. So there are many more adverts out there for permanent posts in the service at the minute. We've got a new recruitment microsite. We're very focused on trying to increase the number or proportion of our workforce that is permanent. And I'd say that's my absolute number one priority, because it's so critical to driving everything else forward. I think if I was to pick it just a second, then it's making sure that the progress that we have been making this year is embedded, and that we keep pushing and pushing and pushing at pace. It's making sure that we don't take our foot off the pedal when there are so many things to be busy and focused on.
If I could, Chairman, very briefly, recruitment, Darrell, are you experiencing difficulty of some of the past history, or have things moved away a bit, and are we making progress in recruitment now?
So the biggest challenge is recruiting experienced social workers, and that's a national problem. There aren't enough experienced social workers available. So I don't think there's a single, there are very few local authorities, certainly in the West Midlands region, that don't have quite a proportion of its workforce that is locum and interim. So it's not a problem or a challenge that's particular to Herefordshire, although Herefordshire has struggled historically for some years in terms of both its geography and its location. Herefordshire is a lovely place to live and work, but also if we want to encourage people to come and live and work in Herefordshire, and it's not just us as Children's Services, it's Herefordshire Council, West Merthyr and other big employers, and we've got to make sure that we work together to make that an attractive offer. Okay.
Councillor Toynbee, I don't know whether you wanted to add anything to that.
Councillor Matthews?
I mean, I think Councillor Matthews, you're absolutely right about supervision, because supervision improves outcomes for children, but also it's an element of training for the social workers. So if they feel they're being supervised, then we can encourage them to stay and to develop in those. So the two are very closely linked. I'll move on then, if I may, to Councillor Fagan.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. So obviously the Greens support this plan, and you know, we're pleased to see it. I think the thing about the plan is that we can identify what we need to do at a strategic level, which is fabulous. What we really need to make sure is that at an operational level, the families that are actually at the coalface of this plan are actually feel that they're being treated fairly and compassionately. And I think that when we reach that point, then we're going to know that our plan is actually successful. So it's good to see this, this being mapped out, our way forward. And obviously everybody agrees there's work to do, but we need to take the families with us. Being one of the people that sat on the Children's Scrutiny Committee earlier this week, it's wonderful to see the recommendations actually being taken on board. I think communicating to families in terms of the legal system has been a very difficult area there. So actually making sure that families have proper access to legal information on the public law outline pre-proceedings process, and also Section 47's S investigations. That's really, really important, because a lot of families feel at sea when they actually get into trouble, and they're trying to work with the system, but there's been very little information available. So I think the sooner that can be done, the better. And I think at that scrutiny meeting, there was also a suggestion that we put links up to the Family Rights Group website, so that families can be properly informed about the processes and where they can get support and what their rights are. I also just want to refer to the letter from the head teacher that was included with the scrutiny recommendations in the appendix, and just the teacher there's quoted, head teacher's quoted as saying that we're walking into a crisis with SEND. And I think it's great to see within the plan that we're on track in terms of identifying where we need to go with special educational needs. But there is definitely a major problem, and I think we've got difficulty with the autism spectrum disorder places in the county, and we've definitely got problems with the SEMH, the social, emotional, mental health support places in the county. And we've got to work really at pace to try and solve that issue, because there seems to be evidence that children are being funneled into the social care system because there is not enough support on that emotional level, and then obviously there are consequences with that. And I know of children that are placed in London because there are no places in the county to support them. So we've got to keep working on that. But we've got a plan. Let's take the families of Herefordshire that are experiencing difficulties with us and keep moving forward on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fagan. I'll move on then to Councillor Ginman.
Yes, thank you very much, Leader. clearly, from the point of view of independence for Herefordshire, I'm pleased to see this as a plan. It is a plan, precisely the point that was made earlier on. It's what you do with it, how you make it work, how you measure it, and make sure that what you aspire to actually happens in a timely manner. So it's good to see RAG rating in there. I think that's a good way of achieving a very visible way of taking this forward. I totally agree with Councillor Davis's earlier comment. It doesn't make easy reading because it is at a high level. And trying to ensure that we can make everybody aware of what's in it and how it works has got to be really important. So it's not, I note the use of the word stakeholder. I think these days everybody's trying to get co-design. In other words, to make sure that all people are engaged in it from right the way through rather than top down, but actually ensuring that the people who it affects can also be part of that process. So I'm glad to see the mention of stakeholder involvement throughout, but that has to be absolutely real. It should be that they're at the core of that and can express real grassroots concerns. It's forward-looking, really. I mean, this whole problem, none of us would wish to be here. Let's be absolutely clear. We wouldn't wish to have this situation. It's come about over a considerable period of time. It's come about because of a failure to recognize the problems and to deal with them in a proper way. So we have three groups of people. We have those that have gone through the system and have been failed. We've got those who are there now, and where there has got to be some question marks about how well the system is working for them. And then there is the future. And this is very much looking at those who are there and in the future. I do share Councillor Fagan's concerns about SEND, and as indeed Councillor Dombey is well aware, I've raised with her the timeliness of minutes from meetings, the failure of getting feedback of educational plans in time for those children in the SEND system is something which I think is really important. And I'm surprised and slightly disappointed that they're not measurables, because it seems to me that those should be in that section 10 as measurables from SEND, because that activity, the speed with which that gets back, that the child then gets the proper educational care and need and plan, is really important. So working with the teaching profession on the ground is absolutely fundamental, and waiting 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, as has been the case in some of these situations, that has got to improve, because you're very soon halfway through a term. So yes, welcome this, good to see it. It is part of a process. It's not the totality of it, but I have no doubt that between Cabinet and scrutiny and Council itself, we will be watching very much how this is taken forward. Thank you.
Thank you. I think Mr. Freeman wanted to comment on that.
So thank you for your questions and observations, Councillor Jimman. In terms of the measures that matter, if you like, for SEND, I share your concerns in that, again, this was a service that needed much more attention. And the reason why there currently aren't any measures attached to item 10 in the way that you suggest is that there is a group working on an interim SEND strategy at the minute, but we haven't had an up-to-date strategy for a while. That's due to come together with a new SEND strategy group early in the new year, and we will then publish that, and at that point update our measures that matter and the plan accordingly. I didn't want to include something in here that hasn't gone through a process first, and again engaged with as you refer their stakeholders, but families and service users, as well as our key partners such as health services.
Thank you. I welcome that and look forward to reading it. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for all your contributions. I think I'll now put the recommendation to the vote, unless, I'll put the vote to the vote. Recommendations as updated in the supplemental paper are that that the executive response to the scrutiny recommendations on Children's Services Improvement Action Plan at Appendix 1 made by the Children and Young People Scrutiny Committee at its meeting on the 13th of December be agreed. B, Cabinet endorse the Improvement Action Plan outlined in Appendix A. And C, Cabinet authorise the Corporate Director for Children and Young People in consultation with the Council's corporate leadership team to submit the action plan to Ofsted no later than 20th December 2022. Cabinet members, are you in favour? Thank you very much. Good. Well, we all want to see better results, and we will be continue reviewing to see how it's not just words, it's the actions, as has been said. So I'll move on to item 8, which is to accept and send any approved UK Shared Prosperity Plan and Rural Prosperity Funds approved by government. And Councillor Chowns, I think this is yours, thank you. Glad I got that right.
Thank you, colleagues. I'm hoping this is a look back. In April, government announced the establishment of the Shared Prosperity Fund, allocation of £7.5 million to Herefordshire. 0.9 million of that was for the Multiply numeracy programme, but the remainder was for shared prosperity activities, and more recently, government announced an additional fund, Rural Prosperity Fund. So these have been subject to very widespread consultation with stakeholders throughout the county. We submitted our Shared Prosperity Fund proposal to government back in the summer, and now after considerable delays, we were notified last week that that funding has been approved. So the plans for the Shared Prosperity Fund came to Cabinet some months ago. The Rural Prosperity Fund came to Cabinet recently. We're waiting still to hear from government for approval for that, but we do need to spend some of the Shared Prosperity Fund funding this financial year. So we are very keen to get on with spending that with our partners to support prosperity in the county. And I warmly invite colleagues to approve this paper, which says that we will accept and spend that funding in line with those already agreed plans. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Chance. Any council cabinet members wish to comment? It's self-obvious paper, I think.
Yeah.
Well, I think I'll just go to leaders, group leaders. First of all, Councillor Lester.
Yes, thank you.
We asked so quickly, I guess, isn't it?
Pardon? Sorry.
Bit of a surprise for you to be asked to talk so quickly. So
No, not a problem. No, the key point we were going to make is, important to get the funds and understand that the funds are going to be spent in terms of the framework of the county plan. But can I ask Councillor Chowns, is there any specific information that we can be given as to what exactly the money is going to be spent on? Because we note the aspirations of the plan, and the money to be spent in rural areas as well would be really important. But there doesn't seem to be any specific highlighting of where the money will be spent, and that would be good. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lester. The reason for that is because all of the specifics were in a previous Cabinet paper for the Shared Prosperity Fund. That came to Cabinet in July. I'm happy to dig that out for you, but all of the details are set out there in lots of detail. As for the Rural Prosperity Fund, I think that was at the last Cabinet meeting that we did that one. So again, all of the details were set out in the appendix there. And those are the plans. That's what's been approved by government for shared prosperity last week, and that's what we'll be implementing.
Councillor Matthews.
Councillor Lester just asked the very question I was going to ask Councillor Chowns.
We've all got short memories.
Then I suddenly thought, hang on, we've talked about it before. Yeah. But nevertheless, can you still just enlighten a little bit where it's going? Please.
Flipping heck. There's lots of details in this plan, right? It's £6.5 million of funding. It's to support activities throughout the county to support the prosperity of business. There's investment in rural communities. All of the detail is in the July plan. If you really want me to, I'll dig it out and I'll kind of read you some headlines.
I'll shorten it then. Is there something going into rural issues?
So the rural part specifically, we got additional funding, £1.7 million from government for the Rural Prosperity Fund, which was an additional kind of extra bit that was announced. And we went through all of that in detail at the last cabinet meeting.
Yeah, happy with that.
Yeah. Thanks. I remember you asked questions about that then, and you know, market towns versus rural areas. Yes.
We've got to watch these townies, Ellie. They'll grab everything, you see.
I think that's a completely unfair assertion, Bob. It's fairly spread.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, I'll move on then. Councillor Fagan.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. We note the report, and it has been discussed in detail throughout the year, so it's great to see it coming through.
Councillor Jimman.
Yes, thank you, Leader. As has just been said, note report, note content. I've actually gone out there to encourage businesses in my area to put forward, start having oven-ready bids in order to try and get some of this money. And that's got to be the way in which we can encourage truly the rural areas to have an opportunity to get that magical thing levelling up, which we clearly need to do.
Thank you very much. I think now I can put that to the vote, unless I've got the process slightly wrong. No, I think we're there. So the recommendations are set out in the report. Cabinet members, are you in favour? That's passed unanimously. Thank you very much. Do I need to go? I don't think you need to go through the recommendations. They're also down. Thank you. So item 9, this is a new item. Council tax premiums on second homes and empty properties. So this is to determine options for proposed changes to council tax premiums as included within the Levelling Up and Regeneration Bill, which is before Parliament at the moment, which, subject to this bill receiving royal consent prior to 31st of March 2023, are due to become effective from 1st of April 2024. This item starts on page 67 of the agenda pack. Councillor Harvey, please would you introduce this item?
Yes, thank you, Leader. So the government's Levelling Up and Regeneration Bill was published in May this year and includes some further discretionary options for the application of council tax premiums on empty properties and second homes. The plan is at the moment that the bill receives royal assent, and the proposed changes come into effect on the 1st of April 2024. So not this coming April, but the one after. So billing authorities that wish to be able to adopt any of the changes arising from the bill are required to make a council resolution confirming their intentions. And that needs to be done at least 12 months prior to the financial year in which the changes would come into effect. Now, this means for us that we have until, well, and every other council in the country, that we have until 31st of March 2023 to move such a resolution through the council's governance process, and that resolution be proposed for adoption by a full council meeting if we're to have the freedoms and flexibilities to implement increased council tax charges on second homes and empty properties. So the report before us today is the cabinet stage of that governance process. And if adopted, this proposal will then be put to full council alongside the rest of the budget detail for next financial year, plus the 4-year medium-term financial strategy, treasury management strategy, the council tax discount proposals, which comprise the full financial package of for approval by full council in February. I hope that government makes sure that the Levelling Up Bill does keep to its promised timetable. This government has been woeful in its failure to keep promises related to reform and enhancement of local government finances. As we heard in the debate last week at full council when the motion was approved to both declare a cost of living emergency and to write to MPs and to government regarding that litany of broken promises. And yet as early as Monday this week, we started to hear of yet more aspects of the proposed funding reform, which have been kicked yet further down the road by the Minister. So let's all cross our fingers and toes and eyes and everything that this legislation does in fact remain on track, because it is a persistent concern that Herefordshire residents struggle to buy and to rent suitable, affordable accommodation. So measures such as these, which are intended as an inducement to property owners to bring empty properties quickly back into occupation, and to recognise the impact of the second home market on housing availability for local people. That's important and long overdue addition to the council's revenue raising toolkit. If second homeowners seek to avoid these additional charges, they must do so by providing their homes into the visitor economy and making them available for rent for a portion of the year, thereby increasing visitor numbers and money spent throughout the local economy as a consequence of that. If the result is that second homes become available for people to rent long term or to buy, then that's another positive consequence of this legislation coming through and us adopting it here in Herefordshire. In these straitened times, it's appropriate that we maximise the freedoms and flexibilities which are available to us, both now and in future years, to generate income to support statutory, essential and the much appreciated discretionary services that remain for the benefit of our residents and our occasional visitors. So I hope Cabinet colleagues see the sense of us ensuring that we're able to consider adopting these new charging powers when they do come into force, and will support the approval of the recommendations outlined at page 1 of the report, which is on page 67 of your agenda packs.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. I think you really said this is just a tool which we don't have to use, but it gets in the bag so that come next year we can decide whether to use it. And I think another year of this in Wales will show any indication of whether any negatives of this plan.
Yeah, and I think the important it's important to note just the scale of second home ownership in Herefordshire. We're not the West Country, but we do have a substantial number of second homes, and on the information that we have at present, if we did choose to implement this, it would provide us with up to an additional £12 million worth of income, and that's equivalent to a 12% rise in council tax at the rate that we currently receive council tax in terms of percentage uplift. So it is a significant addition that we would be foolish not to prepare to make good use of.
Thank you. Councillor Davis.
Yeah, thanks for that. And I can't see any reason why anybody would say no to this. Just remember that it's come from levelling up. Levelling up is about making sure that people are put on the same level. I'm really looking forward to the government bringing out the one around tax avoidance next. I'm sure that'll be kicked into the long grass for quite a few years. But one of the things that I don't know if anybody caught the news about 2 months ago about somebody on the Isle of Skye, I think it was, up in Scotland, and the individual who owned 90% of the holiday rentals was complaining because he couldn't find any cleaners. And somebody had to point out to him, well, where are they going to live? You own everything. And I think that's really the same in Herefordshire. So Councillor Harvey said, you know, we're not the West Country, we're not Cornwall. Actually, where we do have those second homes are in those rural communities. So, you know, you think about up near Simmons Yacht, you've got other areas near the Malvern Hills. You've got a large proportion of those second homes in those rural areas that are pushing our young people out. We've just been listening about the improvement plan and the desperate to be able to get good social workers here, desperate to be able to get different types of educational levels from some of our prosperity funds, etc. And for me, that's what this is all about. This whole taking money from a second home property is about saying, and for those people who own those second properties, actually, you need to pay back to the communities that you're leaving empty during the periods where they're not being let out. You also, you know, I looked in Shropshire's Cabinet report about 2 weeks ago, and they talked specifically about empty homes within Shropshire and how just by going to their social housing providers, they're able to provide homes for young adults or people leaving care. So all of these empty homes, all of these second properties have an impact on us as a community. And for me, this particular thing that we're talking about here is trying to redress that problem. And I think that that's really, really important. So I see no reason why anybody wouldn't agree to this. The only thing, Councillor Harvey, I just wondered, I was having a look on Google before the meeting around some places that are doing it, especially Wales and Gwynedd. I know that they're doing lots of work on it. Is whether or not we're able to, it might be Section 151 officer around this, whether we're able to ring fence some of those funds specifically to target the problems that I've just talked about, rather than it being a broad brush and going across the entire budget. Are there things that we could say, actually, we really want to target affordable housing for our young people, or we want to invest, I know Councillor Chance has talked about retrofit, etc., and getting new types of skills within the county, whether or not we could ring fence it for things like that, or does it go across the broad brush?
Well, it forms part of our council tax revenue, which, you know, is entirely at our discretion in terms of how we spend it. Obviously, a large proportion of it is already committed to supporting the delivery of services and revenue-based activity. This would be funding that would be added to that income generated through council tax, and would be able to be, it's not ring fenced, it's not limited in terms of how it can be spent, and therefore would be open to us to determine how what the priorities were for the council to spend that money on.
I guess my concern is that, as per every time we bring up different conversations, it always ends up back talking about roads. And actually, for me, some of the really integral things are around that affordable housing and really starting to plough some money. And I think if I was a second homeowner, etc., and was doing that and also explaining it to the public, it'd be really helpful to say, actually, this is specifically to target things like that. I just wonder whether that's something we can consider in future.
I think it's something to look at if and when the money becomes available to us, and we've made a decision to go ahead and implement these new connection flexibilities. How things are looking at the moment, you know, if we had multi-year settlements, if we had inflation uplift on government funding, if we had the reform that's needed of the funding formulas, and the reform of both the council tax and business rate systems, all of which have been promised by the government and all of which have been delayed, and as of Monday delayed again. You know, we might be in a better position to, you know, have discretion in terms of where the funding goes. But I wouldn't want to speculate now, given the straits that all councils are in and have been placed in by government, to sort of tie us hand, foot or finger in terms of how we spent that money, when it, you know, it's still a gleam in the government's eye until we've got this legislation through, and you know, we've actually got this as a proposal through Cabinet and Council, and then we've made the decision to implement it after the legislation's been approved. But you know, there's no constraint presently on how we would spend that money, so you know, the options are open.
Thank you.
Councillor Toynbee.
Yes, thank you. Wouldn't it be good if levelling up became more than just a slogan and actually did some levelling up? But I'm not holding my breath on that. Yeah, this report's really useful. really helpful. I think the sort of key considerations in the background really preempts and covers a lot of the points that people would say, yeah, but what about this and what about that and what about this loophole? So I think it's really complete and really helpful. So thanks everybody. And it's important, that point that was mentioned about, it's not just about increasing council tax income, but, you know, empty homes, homes that people need. Everybody needs a home. And, you know, it is an incentive to make those homes available to the people who need them. So that's another really good reason for doing it. Thank you.
Councillor Harrington.
Thank you, Leader. Just a question for the section 151, first of all, is that what's the current discount that is allowed for second homes, and what is the precise mechanism or what's the criteria against that? That's the first question. The second question is that, you know, we're not in a sense putting an extra burden on someone. We're saying that if you have a second home, you will pay the council tax like if someone was, you know, had their own home and lived in Herefordshire and were paying it. So it's not really an extra cost on someone. It's saying you should be paying a fair share of your home. If you live in Herefordshire, well, if you have a home in Herefordshire, you will pay what everyone else pays. That's then for them to make a judgment.
It's paying double.
Beg your pardon.
It's 100% uplift on the council tax they already pay. So you would pay double council tax if you had a second home here that you chose not to Airbnb or to offer for holiday accommodation for a certain proportion of the year and actually have it occupied.
Okay, well, that's answered that. Thank you. A misunderstanding on my part.
I don't think the first question stands either, because you were asking about what discounts apply. So, okay, any other questions?
I do have one other question, though. I might as well. How does that relate to MPs' houses? How would that relate to MPs' houses? Do we know?
I'm not sure.
We'll leave that one to think about.
We'll leave personality out of it, I think.
Thank you.
Okay,
thank you.
You set an example being a council member. Okay, so moving then on to the group leaders. Councillor Lester.
Yes, thank you. A question that there's a big difference in circumstances between where somebody has a second home and then for whatever personal reasons people have a home that becomes unfurnished and empty. I note the census data about second homes, but surely we should have a quite accurate picture through council tax as to how many empty properties we've currently got at the moment. And I'm not suggesting that that figure would be forever like that, but surely you could take an average over the last 5 years as to how many empty properties the council has had, and then that could inform us as to how much money that would raise, as well as the census figure. So perhaps greater clarity on the information we already have about empty homes would give us more information about the merits of doing this. I think obviously the Conservative group acknowledge that if the mechanism needs to be agreed before you can claim it, it's got to go through, and it's got to go through the council's machinations, then we've just got to jolly well hurry up and get on with it so that the option is there. So, you know, I don't think, well, there won't be a disagreement from us to say, yes, let's get that mechanism in place and then decide the situation later on. But the one issue that we're curious about, and it's the figure of £12 million, I've just reminded my group is that when we were scrutinising how the scrutiny process, how the council performed with COVID, when the council was issuing grants to business rates, it highlighted, and I asked the council's 151 officer, it highlighted our lack of information about the businesses out there, and the fact that our databases needed updating considerably on this issue. So I think it's this uncertainty. That £12 million figure has been mentioned, but given that our information wasn't what it should have been with regard to businesses. Our concern is that £12 million figure a realistic one or not? Because there seems to be a gap in our knowledge as to what the true picture is. I mean, it may be a true picture, but I think it would be important for the debate and the discussions moving forward to have as an accurate picture as possible. And I'm not sure we're there yet.
Well, I can say that information is as accurate as we've been able to make it for this report, and obviously it will change between now and when the legislation comes into force. So I think one of the things that the council has been able to do during COVID, and as a consequence of distributing all the grants and the funds and so forth that we have, is that our data has got significantly better over that time period. And, you know, it's been a mission of mine and of Mr. Lovegrove and the finance and the council tax and Revs and Bens teams to really be looking all the way through at how we integrate the data that we've got, join it up, use it cleverly and wisely, to be making cross references and checks, and to make sure that, you know, we weren't paying people who you know, didn't qualify, or, you know, people weren't claiming twice for things by sort of a bit like when you have your school photo taken, sort of running around the back and appearing at the other end. And, you know, we've been, the fraud team have been really successful in trapping some of those clevernesses and tricks out, and we're getting better all the time. I don't want to go into lots of detail about how we would be able to ensure on the second homes that whether or not people did have second homes, but we're fairly confident that the information is available to us to get pretty accurate in determining whether a home is being used as a second home or not. And on your questioning about empty properties, since the let-off on council tax was removed, where empty properties didn't have to pay council tax, they've been coming much more swiftly back into occupation than had previously been the case. I think there is a period of grace when a property is being renovated, repaired, or, you know, is in a state of significant disrepair. But that period of grace isn't very long. So, you know, the builders have to get in there and start knocking the walls about, doing whatever needs doing, because otherwise the property owner will end up paying council tax before the property is you know, is in a position to be let. And, you know, I've had a number of emails from property owners who have, you know, during COVID, at the back end of COVID, were really struggling to get the builders and the tradespeople in to be able to be making the changes that that needed to be made to get the properties back on the letting market. But that seems to have eased off now, and you know, so there isn't a big dwell time for empty properties where there is an intent to let. But there are properties which are empty but are left furnished for various reasons round and about the place, which we are tracking down again through the databases to try and encourage their owners to pay. And of course, the longer a place is empty, the more the multiplier goes up in terms of the amount of council tax that is chargeable, up to sort of 3 times and more. So and it can be backdated. So there are efforts being made to sort of track these properties down. And people out there in the community, if they know that a property is empty, it's falling into disrepair, it's looking scruffy, it's making dragging the neighbourhood down, you know, let the council tax team know, and we can do some investigation and see if we can bring it back into active use.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. Councillor Matthews.
Well, obviously, I'd like to ask Mr. Lovegrove, if government brings this legislation in, is it legally binding on local authorities, or do local authorities make up their mind whether they implement it?
Joe, my understanding of the legislation is it will give the councils the option to make these changes. So that's what the paper in front of you is asking. Does the cabinet want to recommend to council, if the legislation happens, that you, the council, would then choose to enact the arrangements?
Well, that's fine, you know, what's to be, that's it, like, you know, yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Fagan?
Thanks. The Greens are supportive of this. It's a good idea, and it's obviously quite necessary. So yeah, we would support it.
Thank you, Councillor Ginman.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, Independents for Herefordshire supportive of this. Obviously, the small print is going to be the key thing, and we will need to look very carefully at definitions of what's a second home. When it becomes a business, is an Airbnb a business, or is it a second home being let? There's a whole lot of interesting aspects to this. I think the empty and unfurnished, I know that gives rise sometimes to concerns for people in residential homes, that they think they're going to lose their house or it's going to cost them even more. So there are things here that will need to be worked through and understood. The definition of unfurnished is quite interesting as well, as to what you can leave in it and what you can't in order to claim it's unfurnished or furnished. So there's a lot to follow this through, but this is an enabling bill that enables the council to take it forward. And it seems sensible for us to allow that to happen so the council can review the position.
Thank you, Councillor Jim. What goes through my mind there is this move by central government to enable local authorities to tax more locally. They want to allow us to do that, so they tax less centrally, or part of that pattern perhaps.
You're very suspicious, Leader, aren't you?
I'm sorry, Councillor.
You don't think the government genuinely thinks like that, do you?
Into sarcasm in your voice there. Okay, I'll put this recommendation. The recommendations are set out in the reports. Cabinet members, I go in favour. Thank you very much. So I will now close the meeting. I'd like to thank everyone for attending. The next meeting is scheduled for Thursday, the 12th of January 2022, and perhaps I'll put the Chief Executive a little bit on the spot. I'm not sure we've decided what time that's taking place.
I think we were going with the afternoon meeting, given the equipment in the evening.
So it's likely to be in the afternoon. Please can I have confirmation the live stream has stopped?
I confirm